Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Do I have it here? I suppose I have it here. Sorry? Okay, so that's my code, and so you see I have not done anything too sophisticated. I've just given a maximum n which is 10 to the 9. I could have improved it if I had considered it as a real number. Okay, but I didn't care about it. And you see everything has been given in single precision except pi. Pi I thought I'll give it in double precision. Okay, and that's it. I have the exact in this line, and then of course I do the sum up here, and this is the sum down, and then it prints it, and I increment it exactly this way. Okay, that's about it. Now let's see the answers. So this is what file is this? Sum n square test. Okay, so the first column is n. All right, second column is the summing up, third column summing down, fourth is exact, then error up, error down. Sorry, it's a bit skewed. I didn't care about how it was written because I just wanted to plot it and see how it looks. Okay, so now you immediately see I'm only displaying so many numbers, right? I'm using a format where it displays 6 places after the decimal, but the error, you see how it changes between summing up and summing down, which is the last 2 column. All right, so up to 6 places you will get it. Okay, but there is a big difference between summing up and summing down, and always what you want to do is to come up with some algorithm where you can get as much out of the machine as possible. Okay, now the next example I want to talk about is again a very simple one. You all have started calculus. You know how to take a first derivative, right? So let's see. This is actually, if you wish, a real example where you're no longer doing these sums, but you're going to come up with an algorithm, okay, for calculating first derivative, okay. So I want to find, given f of x, let's assume it is a derivative exists, etc., etc. I want to find out f prime of x. What is f prime of x? df by dx at whatever x I want. Okay. So now, how do you define a derivative? What have you learnt in your math class? Yes. So it is some limit, let's say delta x going to 0. Okay. F of x plus delta x minus f of x divided by delta x. Now, what will survive if I write it into an algorithm? Can I actually take delta x to 0? You can't. Just as I cannot take capital N to infinity, I cannot take delta x to 0. Why? Sorry? Yes, and also there is a smallest number. Okay? And the smaller delta x is, what is the other beast that will come? There's one more problem that will come if delta x becomes small. F of x plus delta x becomes indistinguishable from f of x. So that is simply a minus b when a and b are similar. So then the difference cannot be stored. So you see immediately that no matter how you, which side, whichever kind of ball you want to bowl, you are going to come into some difficulty because your computer is finite. Alright. So now if I have to make this into a computer algorithm, how am I going to do? Well, I will just say So derivative, so let's say algorithm. So f prime of x is, so I'm going to forget taking this delta x to 0. I'm going to call delta x to be some h. Okay, so I would just call it f of x plus h minus f of x divided by h. I can also write this as f of x minus f of x minus h divided by h. Correct? Is there any other way of doing it? I can take equal intervals on either side of h. Correct? The third way is I can do f of x plus h by 2 minus f of x minus h by 2 divided by h. Each of this have a name. This one is called forward difference. It's a difference, right? It's a finite difference. Your h is finite. You can't take it to 0. This is called forward difference. What do you think is the name of this guy? Backward difference, right? What is this guy called? Central difference, because you're picking up the midpoint, taking things on either side. So let's see what is the advantage each of these algorithms have to offer. Okay. Okay. All right. Now I'm going to figure out what I get. I know by looking at it, forward and backward will have to give me the same kind of error. Okay. Since h is finite, I expect an error. All right. I can't do anything but expect an error. And the central difference, I don't know. We'll have to see. So, let us take f of x to be e to the x. I can of course evaluate it at any x I want. Okay. So now let's try what's going to happen if I do f prime of x using forward or backward difference. If I do that, this will be e raised to x plus h minus e of x divided by h. Correct? I can pull e power x out. So it would be e power x into eh minus 1 over h. Okay. Backward difference would be 1 minus e to the minus h. Alright. Okay. So now, what do I do next? Well, I'll expand e to the h. H is small. I want it to be small, otherwise I'll have a big error. Alright. So therefore, if I expand it, what is the expansion for the exponential? Leading is 1 plus what? H plus h square over 2 factorial plus etc. minus 1. Okay. These two terms cancel. So I can write this as e to the x into 1 because h and h cancels plus h by 2. So if I can take h to 0, I will get my right answer. The derivative is e to the x no matter what x I evaluate it as at, isn't it? But there is an h which is different from 0. So this tells me that I have an error of order h. This is true for both forward and backward difference because I really don't care about the sign, whether it's a plus h or a minus h. I'm only interested in the magnitude. Okay, and this is the difference I have to deal with. This difference comes from the algorithm itself. Now let's see what happens if I work with a central difference. What does central difference tell me to do? It says pick an x, choose an h by 2 plus h by 2 and a minus h by 2 symmetrically about this point and then find the derivative. Okay, so let's see what happens then. I'm not able to move this easily. Yeah. Okay. So now if I do central difference, then what happens? F prime of x is e raised to x plus h by 2 minus e raised to x minus h by 2 divided by x. That is going to be e raised to x, I am pulling it out. So therefore I have, minus h by 2 divided by h. So simplify, what happens? Expand it again. So you have e to the x. So it is 1 plus h by 2 plus h square by 4 into 2 factorial plus h cube by 8 into 3 factorial plus etc. minus 1 minus h by 2 plus h square by 4 into 2 factorial minus h cube by 8 into 3 factorial plus etc. into 1 over h. Agreed? Now you have terms cancelling. For example, this 1 will go, h will remain, okay, h square will go, h cube will remain, correct? So let's write down the answer. If I do central difference, what I am left with is f prime of x is e to the x. I have I'll have h by 2 plus h by 2, so that's an h. Okay. Then I have 2 times h cube plus 2 h cube by 8 into 6, okay, plus etc. divided by 1 by h square. So this will go in this 4 times, okay. So therefore it is e to the x into 1 plus h square by 24, correct? Oh, 1 by h, sorry, h. I know that I had to get an h square somewhere, so yeah, okay, 1 by h. Is that all right? So you see, the error goes as h square. It is finite, but it is smaller. Given an h, central difference gives you much more precise answers than forward or backward difference. Okay? Because the algorithmic error, so let's write down. The algorithmic error in forward or central difference, because you have to subtract the exact, right? It goes as h. Whereas, forward or backward. And in central difference, it goes as h square. Okay? Which means, if I keep decreasing my h, I should get the central difference to outperform the forward difference for any finite h. But I also know I can't keep decreasing h continuously, right? If I keep decreasing h, there is going to be this problem that f of x plus h or f of x minus h is not any different from f of x in forward and backward. In central, what will happen? F of x plus h by 2 is not any different from f of x minus h by 2. Okay? So there is a problem that comes, which I will call round off. The round off errors are due to finite storage that you have. Okay? How will that go? It would either be f of x plus h minus f of x. In this particular algorithm, it is easy to see, which will be what? This difference will be that smallest value epsilon small we found out. Okay? So this is epsilon small divided by h. In the central difference, this is forward backward. In central difference, it is f of x plus h by 2 minus f of x minus h by 2 divided by h, which is also epsilon small over h. So you see, as I decrease h, algorithm improves, but round off starts to grow. So there is certainly some sweet spot where you will balance the two, and that is the lowest h you can take. How do you find that out? Well, it's very simple. You know the exact answer. For any x, I know the exact answer is e to the x. The answer is e to the x derivative. Okay? Evaluate it, do it numerically, find out the relative error. What is a relative error? How do you define it? Exact minus the numerically calculated one divided by the exact. If you divide by the exact, it does not give you errors which are very large but bounded by 1. Okay? So now let's see how that looks. Wait, let me decrease it. Okay, there you go. Can you see it clearly? So you see, I start, so the h, so this is a log plot, okay? So large values of h is here, and as I decrease h, its powers go down, okay? So now what happens? The red dots are the actual numbers I have calculated. The lines are the fit. Okay, so you see the red dots. So first, this is of order 10 to the minus 1. It is large. Then as I decrease my h, the error starts to fall off. But the other error starts to build up because you have two contribution. One which goes like h, the other which goes as 1 over h. When h is large enough, 1 over h is not going to contribute. This h will dominate. But as h becomes very small, 1 over h will dominate. Correct? So therefore, this goes off like this, and then at some point the error starts to build up. So you cannot possibly keep decreasing your h as small as you want. There is always a threshold after which you cannot do better. And that threshold is roughly this 10 to the minus 7, 10 to the minus 8. That's it. Okay? And there you see, you get almost the precision you want. Because if you work with single precision, I said you will get something like, here you get something like 10 to the minus 7 or 10 to the minus 8. And that's all. You can't do better than that. Okay? So then, this lines we get by fit. And as you see here, this is a straight line. The blue is a straight line with a slope plus 1. That is your error h. That's the algorithm's improvement. Okay? That's error due to the algorithm. The green one has a slope of minus 1. That is the error due to the round off. Okay? So therefore you see, you always have to contend with both the algorithm, improving the algorithm, as well as some point where you will have this round off to kick in. In this particular example where you took a derivative, it's very easy to see where it kicks in, and you can also find it out. Otherwise, you can only build models, okay, and say, well, roughly it is going to behave this way, but it will usually have something which will increase with h or the number of points. If you do an integration, it is the opposite, right? I won't play with h, well, indirectly I'll play with h, but I will increase the n, the number of points I need for the integration, correct? So if I keep increasing my number of points, I should come to the mathematically correct answer, but I can't do that, like the summation. And summation is an example of how you're going to integrate, okay? So this is the kind of choke you will have because the machine becomes finite. But again, you see, you won't do too bad. You see, you get an error of 10 to the minus 7 or 10 to the minus 8. That is not bad at all. Which means in your 8th or 9th decimal place, you're going to make a mistake. That's all right, because you have now got a very precise answer up to this numerical precision, and you can't do better. Okay? Now, how much time do I have? This lecture is until 3. Okay. Okay, let me do something fun, just like that, because I want to do something. Well, are you all familiar with integration? Yeah, you know how to integrate? Very good. So now, as algorithms go, there is a very interesting algorithm, okay, and that has to do using probability, okay. You will use probability to evaluate integrals, okay. So usually when I have an integral, so I'm going to call this integral I, sum a to b f of x dx. Mathematically, you know how you're going to do it, right? You will sketch the function, divide, you're going to get the area under the curve between A and B. You'll divide it into equally spaced points, which is the most natural thing to do, okay? So therefore, mathematically, I know I'm going to take an x, f of x, some function, this is A, this is B, okay? What do? I divide it into some equally spaced intervals. Okay, assume it's all equally spaced. Then I will sum the area up. But to sum the area up, I have to do an approximation. I have to tell you what each area looks like. I cannot possibly say this area looks like this, so I will approximate it this way and then change my approximation. I have to now fix my approximation. So the way I will fix it is, I'll say, well, let me assume that I can approximate it by rectangles. I might evaluate the function's value at the midpoint and then I will have series of rectangles. Okay, that is one rule. So then sum all these rectangles. Immediately by just looking at it, you know, if I decrease the size of the interval, which means increase n number of points, I will do better. That's exactly like what you saw with the derivative. There is one parameter which you can vary to improve your algorithm, which is exactly what comes here. Okay, but I can also do better. So I can approximate f of x in small intervals. So let me call it f of epsilon, because I'm going to call this, not epsilon, h. This interval is h. Okay, so fh, I can say it is a constant a. What can I do better? I can do straight line. Then I can also say f tilde h is a plus b x. If I approximate it by a straight line, I need 2 points, I'll take a straight line. Take 2 points, put a straight line. It certainly approximates it better. Okay, so I know as I increase the degree of the polynomial here, it is going to do better, the integration. And of course, my integration algorithm also changes, because what is it finally? You are going to sum up these geometric shapes. Okay, so it will turn out to be something like I f of xi times wi. Okay, now what I'm going to do, let me take the first case where I take this function to be a. All right, so between a to a plus h, I have f of x dx plus a plus h to a plus 2h, I have again f of x dx. This is what I am going to do, right? Integrated. So here, this is a rectangle. Rectangle's area is what? This height into width. Okay. So therefore, this first term is going to be is going to be, I'm going to find the value of f at some midpoint. I'm going to call it some x0 because it's in the first interval, times h plus f of x1 some point in the second interval times h plus etc. f of x n times h. Okay. So therefore, I know immediately by looking at it, each and every I is h. That is the weight. Okay. So I'm giving the same weight to every value of x I take. Suppose I approximate it by a straight line. These rectangles becomes trapeziums. So then what is the area of a trapezium? if I take the same thing, it will be f of x0 plus f of x1 by 2 into h, correct? The second will be f of x1 plus f of x2 by 2 into h plus etc. So now again I have an integration rule. What is my rule now? If I approximate it by a straight line, then I'll have f of x0, which is the end point, h by 2 plus f of x1 into h, because this gets contribution from both these first and the second interval, it is sitting at the midpoint, plus f of x2 into h plus etc. f of x n minus 1 into h plus f of xn into h by 2. So immediately it tells me that if I want to approximate this function within that small interval h by trapeziums, then immediately I know how to calculate the area, and the rule tells me the weight factors are h by 2 for the first and the last point, which is a and b. For any other intermediate point, it is h. So I know how to carry this out. This, by the way, the first rule is called the rectangle rule. They are very imaginative. The second one is called the trapezoid rule. Okay. Now again, because you have done an integral and you are going to have a finite h, in other words, you are not going to take this h to 0 or n to infinity, there is an error which will come from this. The error is going to be one order of magnitude better in the trapezoid rule compared to that, because after all, you have approximated the function as a straight line, whereas in rectangle rule, it's only a constant. So it has to do that much worse. That's obvious. And as you keep decreasing h, you will improve your algorithm, but you will come into round off. Okay. An alternate way of doing it is to use probability, ideas from probability to do the integral. So maybe I will just quickly tell you, and I'll stop with that because it's kind of fun. Where is this now? Okay. What I want to do is to measure, I'm not going to do the full thing, I just want to do this very quick. I want to measure the area of the circle. Okay, if I have to measure the area of a circle, you all know how to do it. You just have to integrate, right? It's going to be a 2D integral, answer is pi r square, no doubt about it. But I want to use probability. So what do? About this circle, I inscribe it inside a square. Okay, circle has radius r, square has length 2r. Okay, the side 2r. So now I'm going to throw darts. If I throw darts, there is a probability that these darts can fall inside, and let's assume that the darts are such that I have some machine which is going to allow the darts to fall either in the area, nothing outside the square, it's limited. Okay, so no darts are wasted. So as I throw, what happens? The probability of the dart landing inside the circle is a ratio of the area of the circle to area of the square. Okay, so now, and that ratio is of course pi by 4. Alright, and now I can find from this I can find the area of the circle, because if I know the area of the tile, I'll just use this probability to measure the area of the circle, or I can reverse the problem and get an estimate for pi to see how well I do this integral. Okay, it's an integral, but I'm going to approximate it using probability. Alright, so let's see. So what I'm going to do next is to actually make you tell me how many darts should I throw. Shall we start at some conservative number? How many darts you want to throw? 5 darts? Okay, let's start with 10. What do you say? 5, 10? Let's see 10 and let's see what we get. This stupid computer. You see, you have thrown 10 darts. Many have landed inside, 1 or 2 have landed outside. In fact, 2 have landed outside. Let's see the estimation for pi. I get pi correct to the first decimal place, but that's just chance. Let's do the same 10 again. If I have done my random number correct, there. Many have fallen inside, some have fallen outside, but it's not well distributed. Therefore, what happens? I get an estimate as 4. So, I may get my first digit right, I may not get my first digit right, because ultimately this ratio of areas is what? Is going to be number of darts which have fallen inside the circle to total number. Okay, and the way it has been distributed there. So, now let's increase it. Let's increase it to what? 100? 1000. Let's do 100 first. So, if I do 100, I get the first place. Let's try again to see if it is true. Again, I seem to have got the first place right. Let's do 1000. Okay, and you see the distribution here. You see, all the reds are going to contribute to my area correctly, whereas the greens are the ones that have fallen outside. Now, let's do 1000. I get 3.1. This is the distribution. So, you know that as I keep increasing, I am going to capture the circle's area better. The darts will fill the circle better. Now, let's do 10,000. After that, I think my computer will crash. Let's see. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Well, let's do a million. 3.14. But I don't think that 14 is by chance. It'll plot slowly. It'll plot. But you see, so basically you can do this. It's a very different way of doing an integral. This way of using probability is what outlines what are known as Monte Carlo integration method. The name derives its name from this casino in Italy. It's called Monte Carlo, and this idea is to use probability and the fact that you can have a random number and fill and evaluate an integral. Okay, and this is one of the very powerful algorithms that exist today to compute not only very multi-dimensional integrals, but sometimes to also simulate systems which are interacting. Okay, so with that I stop. Let's see if this one even finishes. Maybe it won't finish because this plotting is rather slow. No, it didn't like it. It didn't like it. It didn't like it. It won't plot. So let's do 1 0 less. Now it will do. Okay. Yeah. And this gives you 3.1. All right. Okay. So of course, this is no comparison to actually doing the integral. You will get the value of pi to whatever precision you want, 10 to the minus 7 or 10 to the minus 16. But this is most important once you go to multi-dimensional integrals, okay, because your errors are supposed to add, and this will have this law of large numbers, which will have a dimension independent scaling of errors. Anyway, I didn't talk much about it, but I just wanted to do this as a fun algorithm to look at. So with this I stop. Okay, it's already code dumped and aborted something, so I'm going to stop this. Okay, yeah. Any questions? Sorry? 1 dot, nothing will happen. We'll try. Sure, why not? Estimate is 8. Can you see that 1 dot? Why is it 2? I don't know. Is it, I can't see, is it the 1 or 2? Yeah, yeah, that is right. No, but why? No, why? No valid points. I don't understand. Why can it be, if I just throw a dart, what will happen? Probability is all right, but then it's just the number of points divided by total. So then that, it would be 0. Yeah, it would be 0 or basically, yes, 0 or 4. That's it. Okay. So with that, I stop. Okay. Which round off? So so with respect to the differentiation, we'll just see what the round off is. Okay. So if you look at the differentiation algorithm, so no matter where's the array? No matter what algorithm you use, you always will have one parameter which will control the improvement in the algorithm. But because there is a round off, you will have a similar parameter difference, but it will increase your error. Okay. So in differentiation, we saw that there was an error. Your algorithms went this way. Okay. So let's take forward difference or something like that. This was your algorithm, correct? Divided by h, and no doubt the algorithm improved as you decrease h. Okay. But now, because the error goes as h from the algorithm. But now what happens? As I decrease h, the algorithm becomes better, but f of x plus h becomes very close to f of x. How close can it be? It can be as close as epsilon small. Epsilon small is the last place significant bit you have in your mantissa. It is 1 over 2 power 22 or 1 over some 53 or 54 or something like that, depending on whether you've used single or double precision. But to translate it to decimals, it's 10 to the minus 7 or 10 to the minus 15, nothing more than that. So I'm going to call that number as epsilon small. This is actually machine precision divided by h. So then the total error is h plus some epsilon m over h. Okay. So as h is large, this can be neglected. Your error is of size h. As I decrease h, this error grows, but this will start to dominate at some point, and that's what we saw. Okay. If it was central difference, this would be h square, but this would still be h. That doesn't change it. Okay. So then you would have had an h square plus epsilon m over h, or epsilon m or epsilon small is what I call it, right? Yeah. Some number. That's what. Okay. And while you can model it very easily, while you can write it out very easily here, because differentiation is too simple an algorithm. If you had integration, you will only expect something which will depend on some power of h or n equivalently. Okay? All right. Any other questions? All right. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, ma'am, for the amazing lecture. I am sure I speak on behalf of everyone when I say we enjoyed it very much. It was we found it highly valuable, and I will assure you that each and every one of us will explore the idea on our own later.
Sure. Thank you.
And I thank you again for taking time to come and enlighten us on the idea. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.